So we've got quite a story to tell you today. As they were waiting and preparing to welcome new life into the world, the lives of their twin boys, the dad was fighting for his own life. Hi, I'm Mark Mellinger, and this is Hope, Faith, and Infertility, a podcast brought to you by Southeastern Fertility in Knoxville, Tennessee. Our address on the web is southeasternfertility.org. Again, southeasternfertility.org. Great to have Bryce and Genevieve Bauer with me today. This was just an amazing story that happened really not all that long ago. I don't care who wants to start, Genevieve or Bryce, doesn't matter, but talk about this devastating diagnosis that totally changed your family's world.
Yes, Mark, maybe I can start with giving you a little bit of our background for the listeners. We got married in 2016 and have been a very happy couple. And we, like other couples, had been trying to, eventually have a baby. And we were struggling. And we've been through some treatments for infertility in 2018. We did not achieve pregnancy at that time. And following that, we decided to become foster parents to foster a child and maybe see if there would be potentially possibilities for adopting through the foster system. And so we fostered a little baby girl without going into too much details. We fostered her for a year. We picked her up from the NICU. She stayed with us and we raised her for a year. And eventually she ended up going back home to her mom, which we were glad, but at the same time, we were very sad because we loved her very much. And we had basically adopted her in our hearts. Following that, we also fostered two little boys that were going through difficult times in their own family. And we fostered them for almost a year, and they also had to go back. But we were glad we were able to help them and give them a good family environment for that time. But at the same time, we were kind of understanding maybe it wouldn't be for us and it wouldn't be possible for us to adopt a child. So we ended up reaching to Dr. Keenan and to look at what would be the possibility for us. And we ended up going through treatment, and we ended up achieving pregnancy, which was absolutely wonderful in 2019. So they were two little twin boys. And we ended up being pregnant in 2019, and they were born in March 2020. Just so we have a little bit of background. And when I got pregnant, and Bryce, maybe you can explain a little bit, when we found out about your diagnosis.
Yeah, go ahead, Bryce. Why don't you pick it up here and explain, so great job giving us the background and everything, Genevieve. There's a lot there. So you guys had already been through quite a road. You come to Southeastern Fertility with Dr. Keenan, you're pregnant with twins, and then Bryce, this diagnosis comes into the picture. Explain what that was all about.
Well, well, like she said, we were, at the time when we were doing this, we were also fostering, and it wasn't to adopt a child. I mean, it was to help out with the, openness of if it was going to be an opportunity or a thing that we would consider it. And so at the time, we were fostering a couple kids, and we were out spending time with our family, and it was around that time that we also found out that we were going to have the twins, and at the same time, within the same just a couple weeks, we were hiking in the mountains, and I ended up turning yellow, which we didn't notice till that night. And I turned to Genevieve when I was brushing my teeth, and I said, "Do I look yellow?" And she said, "Yeah." And so we went to the hospital, because with our background as in healthcare, we knew that was something I needed to go immediately to have checked out. And we went in and thought it was going to be like a gallstone or something. And, whenever they came back in and said there was a mass on my pancreas, that, we were not ready for that. And, the next morning, which it was that same morning, we had been in the ER all night, and they put us in a room, and we had been waiting around for the oncologist and then to come in. And, when they came in, they first just basically told us I had probably less than 6 months
To live,
Yes.
because you had pancreatic cancer.
Yes. So, and Genevieve, at this time she was already starting to show, that she was pregnant. And so the first thing that I did was look over at her and see the boys that, on her belly, with the babies in her belly. And it was incredibly just kind of concussive, I guess.
Tell me what you both were thinking. And Bryce, I'll let you go first. Are you thinking, as you look at her, I'm never going to see these children of mine?
Yeah, that was I just, like I said, at first it was just kind of concussive. Like if in those movies where you see, somebody, an explosion goes off right next to them and they're just kind of disoriented for a few minutes. That's kind of what it was for the first, 15 minutes or so. It was just trying to understand what, trying to just get my bearings. But that's the very first thing that I thought, that I didn't know if I would ever get to meet the boys, which we didn't know they were boys at the time.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I should mention I'll go ahead and mention their names. They were just in the office not long ago, and they're beautiful little boys, Henri and David. So, we're so thankful that God blessed you through that. Genevieve, before we go completely through the story, let's pause it here and get your thoughts when you're in the room with Bryce and he gives this diagnosis, still a young man, obviously, that he only has 6 months to live. What was going through your mind?
Well, and of course it's kind of all in a blur, because I felt like it was about 4 a.m. and there was the ER doctor that comes and tells us that. And, he didn't go into details, and I don't exactly remember the words, but basically it looks like, you do have pancreatic cancer, and we're going to transfer you to the oncology yard just as soon as we can. And we'll have the oncologist going to talk to you. And from all the experience of people I know, or that were, close or not so close, but that I've had, pancreatic cancer, we knew they didn't make it long, and it was very difficult and short. So of course I was really devastated, and I remember we hugged each other, and we were like, I thought we would have all the time in the world. Because, it's the kind of thing you don't realize when on a daily basis, how blessed you are with time and be healthy. And until something like that happens and you realize, oh no, your time is the most precious thing you have. And once it's gone, it's gone. And we were just, realizing our time together maybe short. And I was thinking, maybe Bryce wouldn't be able to see the babies. And that was very devastating.
Yeah, that's natural for both of you to be afraid that you'll run out of time. That, after all, was the diagnosis. Here we are recording this interview in 2022 now. Bryce, you're obviously still very much alive and well. Just walk me through how your treatment process went. Obviously, it was a huge success that the medical experts, and I I sort of include you two in that category because, as you mentioned, you work in the healthcare field. That's both of your backgrounds. But the other medical experts, at least, did not expect this was possible. Take me through your road of treatment and recovery.
Well, it got complicated. Right when we got the news, like I said, they came in and told us about 6 months. And, as a father too, I'm thinking not only not seeing the boys, but not being able there to help provide for them, thinking of Genevieve having to do this all by herself, whenever we always thought about us being old together and going through all the kids' milestones together, and all that was going on, I was thinking of all that. And the first thing we did was we called for a priest to come. So, so we called, and he came to the bedside, and I had a confession and a blessing and the sacrament of the sick at the bedside, and his name was Father Martin, it's David's middle name is Martin, David Martin. So when I got released, they went in while I was in the hospital and tried to do a biopsy. And when we went to the oncologist that later that week to follow up with the biopsy results and everything, the oncologist then tells us basically that I didn't have cancer. So we went in, and he said that he can't treat me because the biopsy came up with nothing. And so that at that point in time, it looked like I didn't have cancer. So I had an appointment with a surgeon, oncology surgeon that week. And he was like, no, when we went to see him, he had looked at my scans and everything and said, no, I'm almost completely positive this is cancer. And it might be even worse than what you thought in the beginning, because he said, I think you might have a spot in your liver too. So we went from like that to like, oh my gosh, what is this, like a miracle? Because I don't have cancer. And then all of a sudden, no, I do have cancer, and it's probably worse than what we expected in the beginning.
Well, what a roller coaster.
And so then I had to I went for another biopsy and more testing, and it came back with nothing. Was it the third or fourth biopsy? Fourth biopsy. So it was just like no, negative. And then the fourth biopsy, I got a phone call and they said it is cancer, that we finally have it. But when we went back to the oncologic surgeon, he said, in a way, I was lucky because it's this rare form. It's a neuroendocrine pancreatic cancer, which is different than just the normal pancreatic cancer. So I have more of a chance of treatment, response, and recovery. So so then we immediately after getting that diagnosis, it was that same week, I went that day, in one day to get these scans done, my port in, and to get started with treatment.
And how long did treatment last?
Gosh, it's so when I started treatment, it got fuzzy for me. It was very heavy treatment, a lot of chemo, and really hard chemo. They said actually it was in a way good that I was younger. Of course it's not, but I can actually handle the harder chemo regimen. Whereas if I was older, I wouldn't have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so it was looking like maybe go through this chemo and then have a major surgery called a Whipple, which removes, it's really massive surgery, and or radiation possibly. And I think I started chemo, I think in September.
I'm thinking, the end of September, you put your report and you started chemo. And I think the plan, remember well, was to start with 3 cycles every, 3 weeks, for 3 months, basically get a set of scan to see how it was working. And if there was any response, to give you another 3 cycle before radiation and surgery.
Yeah. I ended the chemo somewhere at the end of January the following year, or the 1st of February. And then I started radiation. And when Genevieve, she ended up having to go on bed rest for a little while with the boys, because they were big boys. And she was tried to take care of herself, take care of me sometimes, and where I'd be in the first days when I'd get chemo, I couldn't do anything but sleep. I'd be curled up in the bed, and days would go by without me even realizing what, I would have been up and down and stuff. I just don't, it's kind of a blur.
Well, that's chemo. Yeah, that's chemo, and that's how it is. It just wears your body out.
Yeah. So, during this time I was thinking there was so much of my life been taken up by cancer. My sister had it. Whenever she got diagnosed when she was 17. And she died when she was about to turn 21. And I had stopped working to take care of her and be with her whenever she was going through treatment. And I was actually her bone marrow donor. And then that's what I've done for a living, is work with cancer patients. And that's, what I still do for a living. But so And then, so I've had every kind of spectrum you can get as a family member, caregiver, medical professional, and a patient. So
when were you given the all clear that it's in remission and it's looking good?
it was towards the end of the chemo. Whenever we were talking about radiation or surgery, they were saying, pretty much they thought the cancer was gone, and that I had, they, within the first repeat scans after a few weeks of chemo, they could see that it was reacting well to the chemo. And then at the end of it, they really couldn't find any marks for the chemo. So they, instead of having the surgery, actually ended up having radiation. And they just tried to burn out if there was anything left. So.
And here we are a couple of years later, and your last exams have been all clear, right?
Yes.
It's wonderful. It's amazing. Yeah,
Mhm.
Genevieve, go ahead.
Well, and during so my pregnancy was basically during Bryce's treatment,
Yeah.
but Bryce was just being, amazing. During all of that, he was so strong always, positive, and always, praying and going to church, and always keeping his spirits up. And it really brought us, closer, and even with our family, our other family members, his family and my family, it really brought us together. And in realizing, how precious is life, and he's been very amazing. And of course, we go on, we like to go on PubMeds, being medical, nurses and healthcare professionals, and I had gone to PubMed looking at, scientific articles about Bryce's cancer, and the chemo that were available and different treatments. And the reality was that over all the patient that had been treated with his regimen of chemotherapy, from what was published so far, he had something like an 18% chance of partial response. So it was really on the low side, and basically almost no chances of complete remission. Like, it just never happens. So, and of course I didn't want to scare Bryce even more, so I kept that to myself, but it was at the same time it was a very dark time in our life. Yeah, it definitely was the lowest point in our life, but Bryce was able to, and overall we were able to keep strong and keep faith, and going through that stronger. And and now he's in remission, and it's a miracle, and he's healthy, and we have two wonderful boys that are about to turn 2. So it's good to always have faith and keep hope that it's going to work out.
Well, yes, and we only have just a few minutes, 4 or 5 minutes left, so I want to get this good conclusion of the story in there. Tell me what it was like when the boys were born. That when Henri and David were born, both of you thought it was going to take a medical miracle for Bryce to be able to see them. And indeed, that was what happened. What were your feelings when the boys were born? Genevieve, I'll start with you, and then Bryce.
Obviously, we were absolutely overjoyed. I mean, this has been the happiest moment of our entire lives. For me, it was a dream come true, because after years of having difficulty achieving pregnancy, we were, God had given us, children, and 2, and I was like, what an absolute miracle and blessing. And after the struggle, and we were blessed, and it was definitely the happiest moment of our lives.
Bryce?
Well, the boys came I was walking across the street getting radiation treatments when she was in the hospital. So I was walking from one hospital to the other, and I was so excited that I made it that far. Like I was really amazed and thankful about being in remission and getting the chance to see the boys, but that was nothing compared to how I felt when I actually got to hold them when they came and stuff. I couldn't think of anything that felt so good as, just being so worried about whether I'd even get to meet them or anything. Just to know that I would have held them, and there would be at least a picture of me and them together was, more than I could even asked for. So
It's amazing. So just a couple minutes left. I want each of you, your thoughts on this. Was this a medical miracle? And how did you grow in your relationship with God in the process? Bryce, I'll start with you.
I've always been more spiritually inclined, even more than Genevieve. I've been that way, since I was young. But it takes you to a different level. As far as, I think for me, it made me understand even more that, the fear I had about not seeing the boys or any of that was still just me wanting to control my life, whereas if it's what God's plan is for me, is what I have to completely submit myself to. And sometimes it's not exactly what we want. And, one of the biggest for me, whenever one day we were going to get exam results to see if I did actually have a spot in my liver, and we were worried about it, and we were talking about it and stressing and everything. And I was reading in the Bible that morning and had read the story about a 13-year-old girl who's told that, she's going to be the mother of God, and, and just her just completely submitting herself to it, whether she was, could be stoned to death or whatever. And she's just like, well, according to his will. And I read that morning, and this experience just really made that sink in for me.
Wonderful. Genevieve, what about you?
I think Bryce explains it very well. To continue building on that and to make it short, I think God has been there in the darkest time in our life. And, I feel like sometimes faith in your life it just can vary. Some times in your life, it's lower, and sometimes it's very strong, and you can have doubts and going through, times like that. But, in this very difficult time, the darkest time of our life, God was there, and we completely submitted to it, and we prayed and prayed. And even though the chances were against us, he made it, and he made, those sons for us, and he healed Bryce. And if there's literally no scientific way of explaining this, but he was healed, and it's all because of God.
Amen. Amen. He answered kindly. he answered kindly. It's just an amazing story. It's an amazing road, and it was certainly our privilege, as you kept us informed on the situation, to pray for Bryce daily, and we got the result. God granted the result that we all wanted. We're so happy for you guys and your family, and we're so thankful for you taking the time to share this amazing story, which I know is going to encourage and inspire many. For those of you who are watching and listening, if you want more information about Southeastern Fertility, you can go to southeasternfertility.org. That's our website, southeasternfertility.org. You can always schedule a free 15-minute consultation if you haven't started with us yet. And Dr. John Gordon will be happy to get a new set of eyes on your situation. I'm Mark Mellinger, and this has been Hope, Faith, and Infertility.